right. Thanks, Annette, for joining us, and welcome to all those that have joined us to this webinar. I am so pleased to be doing this with my good friend, Annette. Annette is a special needs attorney in Massachusetts, and the question is like, why am I bringing somebody from Massachusetts to talk about special needs in Illinois? And I know we were advertising in Massachusetts too, so there's probably some crossover here of people that from both Massachusetts and Illinois. But you know, I was reading Annette's book, and I thought I've got to do a presentation with her, because everything that she was saying, I can relate as being a special needs dad. So welcome, Annette. Thanks for joining us.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I miss seeing you guys. I miss you and our group. So I'm so happy to be here, and it's really special to be talking to you right before Elizabeth's birthday, which is Sunday. So this is a very special weekend for us and our family, and it's always nice to be remembering Elizabeth around this time, and I love having an opportunity to talk about her. Thanks for helping me keep her memory alive.
Absolutely. So let's kind of go over our minutes. You know, we're doing a quick introduction. Annette, do you want to talk about your firm a little bit real quick, and what you do, and then we'll go into the presentation, and then we've allowed for about 20 minutes of Q&A. So if you have any questions during this presentation, don't hesitate to ask those questions in the chat box, and then we'll pull that chat box up after the presentation, and we'll ask all those questions, and hopefully between Annette and I can answer those questions. So
yes, love questions. I really want to talk to you. I don't want to lecture at you, so please, let's spend all of our time doing questions. That'll be awesome.
Absolutely.
I don't know. I hate introducing myself. You introduce. It's better if you introduce me. I hate talking about myself.
Oh, I know. But Annette's been practicing for how many years, Annette?
I'm old, so over 20.
Over 20, okay.
Put it that way.
Okay, right, all right. So Annette's been practicing law for over 20 years in Massachusetts, and she's got a great practice, probably a very dominant practice in the Massachusetts area on special needs, and you know, and she's a published author of a wonderful book, Butterflies and Second Chances, and and you're married to a wonderful husband. I've met him multiple times, and so yeah.
And that's it. And I'm a podcaster. I love my podcast. It's so much fun.
Yep.
And this year we opened up a new company, which I'm so proud of, which is one of the reasons that I get out all over the country and speak, because we do things beyond Massachusetts and we reach families everywhere. And our company is called Special Needs Family Services, and we do what we call completing the circle of care for people. So we are supporting people's families everywhere, and we can talk more about that later.
Yeah, absolutely. So, and then you know, and we're both special needs parents. So and we've been through the ringer, both of us. So and I think that's an important thing to realize, that one, us attorneys have also gone through a lot of things that everybody else has gone, that special needs parent has to go through. And you know, I've been practicing for about 15 years in the Illinois and Missouri area. So you know, love helping people with helping people through their life's transitions. So
it does connect you in a way that folks who haven't been through this life changing event can't possibly connect with. They can definitely be empathetic and sympathetic, but walking for a minute in our shoes just changes everything, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. It does. You know, walking through that pattern and you know, going through that change at birth. Sometimes, you know, I just remember those days in the first, you know, first hours, first minutes,
Yep.
knowing that life is not going to be the same as what we expected.
Yeah.
And I think that's important to know. So
that's how I ended up writing my book, actually, because life was really lonely in the beginning. And hey, I'm just kind of leaping right in. I'm sorry.
Yeah, go for it. Go for it. So.
But really, that's what happened. You know, back in the day, before we had social media and the internet, and you know, we just had these things called listservs, and you know, they were email lists. And when I had my little baby and she was a 29-week preemie in a 2-pounder, it was important to understand that it was nearly impossible to get out of the house. It was incredible just to get out to the grocery store and to think about trying to get out to a meeting, to meet other parents, to get out to, you know, connect and get resources and to meet other families and have a good cry, never mind a cup of coffee, was, I don't know, it was like an act of Congress. And I was so starved for companionship, attention, information, everything. It was such a long journey, and then, you know, the roller coaster ride with Elizabeth, it was incredible. And life is very different now for special needs families, but it's still lonely. It's still hard. It's still challenging. It's still a roller coaster ride. And so, you know, after Elizabeth died, I really needed to put some of this stuff down on paper. And when I got partway through, I realized that I was doing this more than just for me, and that it was going to really potentially help somebody. And so it turned into something different than just this journal that it started out to be. And it really morphed into an actual book. And that really was the beginning of so much more, you know, so much more. And it's so, it was so significant to me because I've been searching for a way for Elizabeth's life journey to have meaning beyond our own family. And, you know, we all want that, right? I mean, we all want our kids' struggles to be meaningful, because it's kind of, you know, those important life questions, like, why do our kids suffer? And, you know, this for us is our way of having Elizabeth have meaning beyond just being here on earth.
Yeah. And you know, and going through the beginnings, and you know, I remember in reading your book, and I was like, I just paired it all together. You know, the doctors will just give you a diagnosis and say, here's your diagnosis, and where do you go from there? And you're always, you feel alone in going through that analysis, and okay, what do I need to do next? And you know, I just you know, I love the passion in your book about, you know, where do I go from here? And they're not advocating for me, and there's nobody there. So
no one-stop shopping, no one door, no, oh, here's your baby, here's your diagnosis, and right next to her, here's your advocate. Here's the person who's going to walk this journey with you. Here's your mentor. Here's the person who's going to show you. Here's the lamp that lights your way, and that doesn't exist. It's not there. Some states do it better than others. Some states definitely have more of a one-door kind of policy. In Massachusetts, we still don't have that. We're really much more fractured than in other states, but most states really struggle with this, and I don't want to sound alarmist. Do they do it on purpose? I don't know, maybe. But it's hard. It's hard for families, and it's really hard for individuals. I mean, I don't want to get up on my soapbox, but man, this virus, this pandemic that we're under is really shining a spotlight on some of the things that we really are struggling with as a society. Some of the things that our most disenfranchised folks are struggling with every day. But we really, things are really bubbling to the surface right now. Okay, I'm off my soapbox. Let's get back to talking about Elizabeth.
All right. So yeah, I mean, it's kind of the key takeaways from your book is basically like we've been talking about, day in the life of a special needs parent. And do you want to talk about the place of strength versus the crazy parent? I think there was a chapter 1, chapter 2. that feeling.
Ooh, yeah. Well, I think so I've given a lot of interviews over the last few years, and one of the things that I promised myself was that I'm just going to be honest. My place of honesty is to talk about the fact that I've spent a lot of time in my life being really mad about a lot of things. I am not one of those moms who's going to get out there and say, what a joy it has been to be a special needs parent, because you know what? It hasn't been. Not for me. For those of you who are living the life, good. I'm glad. That's great. It hasn't been that way for me. And a lot of people I talk to, and I just want to help and say that out loud so that other people who are struggling also can feel validated, because I always felt bad. Even today, I'm reading about, if you go on social media and you're looking at these pictures of all of these beautiful meals that people are making while they're staying at home, and, all of these great lessons that they're putting together for their kids, and all of these fantastic things that they're accomplishing. I want to hear from those parents who are falling down on the job, and the ones who are starting to drink martinis at noon, because you know what? That was me, and they're out there. And there are probably more of them than there are the people who are making casseroles and who are putting smiley faces on the peanut butter sandwiches. I want to know about them, because
the mac and cheese kids,
right? Or the ones who are watching TV 6 or 7 hours a day, because look, that's who some of us are, because it's okay. Like, if you're just trying to get through the day, it's okay. It's okay. And we're all going to survive. We're all going to be all right. And so my book is not a happy book every minute of the time. And the thing is, I found my way through it, and you will too. And what I was able to do was kind of figure out that I wasn't getting anywhere with craziness and anger. And I did eventually find some great moms who did mentor me. And that was the key, finding my group, and for me, it was moms. It doesn't have to be moms. It's also great dads too, Todd.
Yeah.
There are great dads out there too. For me, it was moms just because that's who I connected with, but whoever is your source of support. Some people have really wonderful family support, whatever that source of support is for you. And that enabled me to come to a great place of strength and to pull together and start finding my path to advocacy. It's a long road. It wasn't immediate, and that's where I got started.
But I think too, people always think, oh, that's the crazy parent, but that is the advocate parent. And there's a difference between an advocate parent. The advocate parent is going to come in and say, did you do this, this, and this? Or what else? Or why is this diagnosis? Or and knowing that you can ask questions and question the doctor. I think that's important. Come from a place of strength that you're not, a crazy, what people perceive as a crazy parent is not crazy. You're actually being an advocate for your child, and you got to ask the questions and be okay to ask the questions, because no one is going, if you don't, if you can research it and figure it out, but if you're not asking questions and the doctor's got all this knowledge in the back of their mind and they're not giving you the, answering questions that you may have, you've got to ask that question. And it's okay to ask questions and question your doctors and ask for additional advice. Be confident. Yeah.
Be confident and know that you are the expert in your child. I always said we are the expert in the Elizabethness of Elizabeth. It was so unique that we're the ones who had to pull each piece together. We didn't know mitochondrial disease and fatty acid oxidation deficiency, but we were the ones who had to coordinate it all. So we pulled this piece together from this specialist and this piece together from this specialist, and we were the navigator of everything. And if you look at yourself that way, like you're the CEO of the Elizabeth Company, and you need to just pull all those pieces together. Every parent has those skills. You're managing a household and children and all of those things. You have those skills already. You know how to do this. And so if you can just call on those skills. I interviewed another parent who was an amazing HR director. And when she figured out that she just needed to turn her business skills on and put those in place in managing her child's special needs, that's when, she started to get good results as well. Not that she needed to be cold necessarily in, addressing those needs, but just that she needed to apply the skills that she already had. We all have those skills, the training in different things that we do. Maybe for you, it's creativity. Maybe you have great math skills. Maybe you have great organization skills. Whatever you've got innate to you, you take those skills and you apply them to, what you need to do to pull together a great life for your kid and, get organized around that. And you can do it, but you have to come to that with confidence. For me, I had this great pediatrician who recognized that I needed something to do. So he signed me up for a volunteer position because he knew that was going to help me get, beyond, my craziness. And so that got me into this volunteer job at Children's Hospital, where I started having some something to keep my mind occupied besides what was going on with my kid, but also kept me in the middle of things that were going on with my kid. So it was the best of both worlds. So lucky me, I had a great partner in my pediatrician early on.
Yeah. So, kind of what you're, one step at a time, moving forward, putting together
that team. Yeah.
Putting a team together, and coming up with a plan. So
the team changes over time. That's the thing too. So the team that you have when your child is 3, not the same team when your child is 10. So that's going to evolve, and it's okay to let go of some of the people and replace them with other people over time. Remember, you're that CEO. So that team is going to be ever evolving, ever changing. You want to give people a hug and a kiss and thank them for their service and move on to the next group of people. And also, when people leave you before you're ready to have them leave you, that's okay too. That happens too. So just remember that whole it takes a village thing with our kids. It's like more than a village. It's like, a United Nations almost. Like that's what it takes for our kids. But just be understanding that, again, you're in charge of pulling that team together. How you find that team is challenging because, you always want the best therapist and the best teacher and the best this and the best that. You already know how to find those people. You want to ask for referrals from other parents, right? Take that with a grain of salt, because what's good for the neighbor's kid who has autism is not necessarily good for your kid who has autism, right? But again, it's a good place to start.
Yep, absolutely.
And always have a plan. I'm one for always having a plan, but again, plans are ever evolving.
Sorry. All right. So talk to us about your podcast.
So my podcast is so much fun. If you can't guess, I love to talk. So when I started my law practice so many years ago, it was because I've always wanted to be an advocate for people. Before I had my daughter, I started out in life. I went to Howard University School of Law. I always wanted to be a civil rights attorney. And I am a civil rights attorney. I advocate for people with disabilities. However, not everybody can afford an attorney, and not every matter needs an attorney. So a lot of things that I found myself doing throughout the years were much more in the realm of life planning, life mapping, and more advocacy and in the social work field. Like I found myself being 50% social worker, and really just helping people. I use the word navigate a lot, and life map, life plan, but doing it at an expensive rate. Also, our malpractice carriers don't understand what I'm doing, and my practice doesn't fit in really well. Like it's kind of so strange. It was hard to attract people to practice this kind of law. It was just, so a couple of things started happening over the last couple of years, and I could only actually pay attention to this after my daughter passed away. But it's been a dream for a long time to do something a little different to help families. I always wanted to do something, to create something that I was looking for when my family was young, and this one place to go. And so I've been dreaming for a long time about starting special needs companies and special needs family services. And part of that was this way to get information out to people that was free. So the podcast is one piece of that. Let's bring on guests and get information out to people all over the country and actually all over the world, because we have listeners like everywhere, Todd. It's unbelievable. Like
that's so awesome.
Australia and New Zealand and the Philippines, and like, I don't know, there's some like 20 countries or something now. It's so exciting that people are listening everywhere. And I'm interviewing people who are special needs experts and parents and siblings, and mostly people who are both, who cross over, family members, but also experts. So that's the gist of the show. And I call it the Special Needs Survival Podcast because it's all about people who have some great advice about, how to get through, how to get along, how to get by, how to get to the next step. So we talk about all kinds of topics that people are facing in the community. And we've been doing a lot of talking over the last couple of months about the epidemic, the pandemic, what are we doing to get through right now? And so some of the podcasts are just with me and Mark, or me, but most of them have guests, and it's been phenomenal. It's been so much fun. I love it. And so it's great. I'm thinking about trying to do a TV show next. But
hey, there you go.
Of course, I still have to run my law practice, and I have this new company that we're doing, Special Needs Family Services, which is completing that circle of care. So we're acting as fiduciary for people that don't have a guardian, a care manager, a power of attorney, a healthcare agent, things like that. Or we are supporting a family member who is acting in that role, but maybe not be close by. So we're trying to, again, complete that circle of care. And so we're starting out in the New England states, and we are expanding. We can be a trustee for anybody in the US, and we are already. We have a sizable number of trusts already, because I've been trustee for a long time. But the circle of care piece is, we're trying to stay local to New England right now. That's growing. Most of the special needs law pieces are federal in nature, not statewide. So most of what we do is pretty much, across the US. So I find that very exciting because we're able to offer things. We have a nurse and a social worker on staff. I've had them in my law practice for a long time, but I've just moved them out into this other company because when I send a social worker off to Social Security or to Medicaid, they get friendly smiles because they're helpers. When I send a lawyer off, it's like a completely different story.
Yeah, I mean, you go, you bring a lawyer to an IEP meeting, and it changes the dynamic.
Exactly.
Not to say that you shouldn't bring a lawyer at certain points in time to an IEP meeting, but it changes the dynamic of that meeting. I was just on a phone call with the Department of Health Services about a child just recently, and they wanted to bring their lawyer in because I was on the phone call.
Exactly. That's exactly what happens. It slows everything down, and it makes everything adversarial, and it doesn't have to be. And I find that most public agencies really do want to help. Most of the time. Most of the time, most do. Not always, but most. And, and we even do IEP meetings that way. When there's just a parent who needs a little support, we can send our social worker in just to attend an IEP meeting through family services. We don't even have the law firm involved. There's no lawyer, law, anything on the name, So the social worker can go with the family, and she's just there to listen, help, support. Such a different outcome for the same thing and at a third of the cost for the family. We're happy because we're getting the outcome for the family that the family needs. The family's happy because they're getting what they need, plus they're not spending a fortune, and everything gets done faster because, again, you know, they're not going through litigation, and it's just so much better for the kids. So
yeah, and what you're doing, and I know what our firm is doing is, I mean, we're here for the kids. It's not, you know, it's not for to start, you know, a litigation case or anything else like that. It's about the kids and how to make the kids move forward and grow and get the services that they're, you know, entitled to. So.
right. And with our social workers, we can send them off to the housing authority. We can send them off to, again, to, you know, Medicaid office, or not now because everything's closed, but, you know, to the Social Security office. We can send them, you know, pretty much, you know, into the community to do wellness checks, and they can care manage. They can do lots and lots of stuff. They can help people with their budgets. They can do a lot of things. So it's just really nice, and it's a great service, and it's I don't know, it's making me so happy because it's taking care of people. And on the law side, it's important to protect people's rights. It's important to enforce people's rights. It's important to get planning done. All of that, very important. But I went into the law to help and to support and to take care of people. And the law has evolved in the 2 decades that I've been practicing. It's much more transactional. It's not like that anymore. And I find it less and less satisfying all the time. So I am so happy to be able to do more of the caring law that I want to do.
Absolutely.
But not in the law firm. I'm doing it on the other side with family services. So yeah. I'm really excited to be able to do this. And the podcast is a way to really connect with the community and with all of our community partners. And it's something that makes us zero money, but it is just another way to take care of our community.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, and providing people, you know, the ability to think through the problem, you know, and to be able to grow. So yeah, love your podcast, love everything that you've been doing. On here, we've got helpful resources. You want to talk about those?
Yeah, so some of my favorite places to go for information, NAMI is wonderful. If you have anybody in your life with mental illness, I recommend checking out your local NAMI chapter. Also, AANE is local to New England, but they are a great place to go. So AANE, for anybody with an autism spectrum disorder, definitely check them out. The ARC of the US and ARC chapters everywhere, amazing resource for anybody with an intellectual or developmental disability. Social Security obviously offers some financial entitlements for people if you need. It's a small amount of money, but any income stream can really help. Now, what's not on here is Medicaid. So you do want to make sure that if you are entitled to any Medicaid programs, that you work with any of your local organizations to make sure that you're not missing any benefits that you're entitled to. Let's see. One of the other things is every state has their Oh gosh, I just went right out of my head, Todd. I hate Fridays, and I also hate being old. I'm going to think of it in a second. When people start asking me questions, it's going to pop into my mind.
Yeah.
We should take questions now.
Take questions now?
Yeah.
All right. Well, we are at that point in time. So let's see what questions we have. Anyone have any questions?
You can really ask me anything. I know so much about so many things. I promise. Special needs trust.
Oh, here we go. It was me trying to find the questions.
And a lot of people are asking questions about, like, what do we do now in the middle of this pandemic when, you know, we can't get to a local Social Security office, or we can't get to our local Medicaid office, or we can't, you know, have our IEP meeting. So if you have questions like that, let me know.
Okay. So the question was, I love, hi Annette, I love your setup of your practice as a tribute to Elizabeth, and that you have a podcast. This is Regina Kruger.
Hey, Regina.
And let's see if I can get to the question. In the meantime, if grandparents or other families want to leave money to our kid, should I give them the name of the Supplemental Needs Trust or the D4A Trust? And would a tax ID then have to be assigned? Would this money then become viable?
Ooh.
Visible to Social Security admin?
That's a really detailed question.
It is a detailed question.
Okay, I'm going to see if I can parse that out a little bit. Okay, so
and we can break it down. So
good to hear from you. So a supplemental needs trust and a D4A trust are two different trusts. A supplemental needs trust is generally a third-party trust that's funded with other people's money. A D4A trust is a first-party trust that's generally funded with a disabled person's own money, and usually it needs to have a payback provision or estate recovery provision. And that means that when the disabled person passes away, if there's money left in that trust, it's going to potentially go back to repay any Medicaid claims of the state that has had some Medicaid expenditures for that disabled person. So it is important to understand where the money goes if there's a lifetime gift, or if there is a gift under a will or under a death bequest. But with grandparents, there can be some trickiness there, because sometimes people want to leave money in order to qualify for nursing home stays. So this is a very narrow exception that would allow an elder to pop money into a D4A trust for a child or a grandchild, only those two, and then go off to a nursing home and qualify for Medicaid themselves to pay for their nursing home stay. So that's a rare exception to the rule. If they use a D4A trust for the grandchild, and then they qualify for Mass Health themselves or Medicaid in their state, they will not have a transfer penalty to give the money away for themselves. That would be the only reason that they would use a D4A trust for their grandchild, to transfer money to their grandchild. Otherwise, under every other condition, they would want to use a third-party supplemental needs trust. You've got two things going on here. What's good for the grandparents and what's good for the grandchild. Those intergenerational planning issues need to be looked at very carefully. And oftentimes you have two different sets of attorneys who are doing the planning. You've got planning for the children and grandchildren, and then you have a different set of attorneys for the grandparents. And a lot of times you're in 2 different states. Very complicated, okay? When you pop money into an SNT or a D4A, yes, at that time, you're going to need a tax ID number. The trust goes, quote, live, and potentially needs to start investing that money, needs to start reporting taxes, reporting investments, and filing tax returns. So there's a lot to consider before gifts, inter vivos or lifetime gifts like that are made.
Yeah.
That is as short of an answer as I can give you for such a complicated question.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Regina. I love you for asking that.
So, there's been several questions about ABLE accounts, and
oh, great, love ABLE accounts.
So,
can you combine them and give me sort of an overview?
One says, please discuss ABLE accounts.
Okay. Okay.
But let me see. I'll get to the. But who should get the where can you establish an ABLE account?
Yep. Good question. All right, let me just talk about them.
Yeah.
I love ABLE accounts. ABLE accounts are great, but they are not trusts. And it's very important to understand the difference between ABLE accounts and trusts and what they can be used for, what they're good for, and what they're not good for. Because there are pros and cons to everything, right? Nothing is perfect. ABLE accounts are very simply a financial account, very much a bank account. They do have some investments that are attached to them, but they're very limited in what they can be invested in. They are set up in some states. In Massachusetts, Fidelity Investments is our company that is allowed to have them. Todd, what's going on in
Illinois? In Illinois, Missouri, you can usually find a financial planner, so your local financial planner, and whether it's an Edward Jones or Benjamin Edwards, there are financial planners out there that can offer it, and then invest it either through the specified Illinois state program. So. Okay. So you do have
some options.
You do have some options here in Illinois.
Okay. So the ABLE account is an account of the disabled person. Again, it's not a trust. It's an actual bank account / investment account of the disabled person. Here are the limitations. You can only put in up to $15,000 per year, at least now. That amount is tied to the gift tax amount, so that could increase next year. This year it's $15,000. It doesn't have to increase, but it could. You can only have one account per social security number. So I can't establish an account and my mother establish an account and, an aunt establish an account and so on and so on. One account per social security number. You can only have up to $100,000 in that account. That includes the amount that it grows to. It can actually go over that amount, but you can only have up to $100,000 in there in order for it to be free from penalty for Social Security purposes. Medicaid actually allows you to go over that amount, but we want to stick to the lowest common denominator for Social Security purposes and just think about that $100,000 limit and not get too complicated in our thinking. In addition to that, you can go over that $15,000 limit if you're working. You can save more from your work income as well. But again, we don't want to get too complicated in our thinking about this because you're still going to be limited in that $100,000 number as well. You can also only set up an account, an ABLE account, if you were disabled prior to age 26. You don't have to prove disability to anybody. You have to just sign a statement saying that you were disabled prior to age 26 and that you were Social Security disabled, but you don't have to actually be on Social Security. You just have to have a similar disability to what would qualify you approximately. You know, it's, and again, there's a lot of fuzziness here, but it's not as strict of a limit as if you would qualify for Social Security. So it's just along those lines, and there's a medical disability as well.
Mm-hmm.
The real kicker is that you cannot spend the money on absolutely everything and anything like you would if you had a trust. Qualified disability expenses cover a whole lot of things, but they don't cover everything. And I tell people this because you can't spend the money on, you know, buying video games, for example. They're generally not going to be used for entertainment, recreation, travel, you know, that sort of thing.
Yeah,
and
family.
I have people argue with me about this all the time, you know, and so told me I could blah, blah, blah. I'm like, okay, you can do that. And if somebody ever challenges you, you know, you may have a problem. So right now, I have never met somebody who's had Social Security ask them for their receipts from their ABLE account. However, this is fairly new territory, and we just don't know how this is all going to play out. They're really pushing people to use ABLE accounts, so I think they're going very soft on ABLE right now, but I don't think that's going to hold forever. The key thing about ABLE accounts is they do have a state recovery as well. So you have to understand that anything in that account can potentially be recouped, but they're not as, it's not as big of a deal, because unlike a D4A trust where the estate recovery is for a lifetime, with ABLE, it's only from the date that you established the account. So there is a limit there. You start the account on January 1, 2020, that's the extent of your recovery, as opposed to you start a D4A trust on January 1, 2020, and it goes back to your date of birth, okay? That's a big deal for some people. Now, I think the best use of an ABLE account is really for somebody who you want to try to do a little saving and also learn how to spend and budget for things. Again, they can't spend it on absolutely anything they want, but now that in our state, Fidelity is now allowing debit cards, which is making it a little bit easier for people to actually use these accounts. I think it's nice to allow somebody to actually have a little bit of flexibility to you know, kind of, maybe this is their only bank account that they have use of, and it can, now we can go over $2,000 and we can have a little bit of a savings account. And I think that's the best use of an ABLE account. That's my little spiel on ABLE accounts.
All right. Here's a good one. What age should you start planning for your child's life after high school?
Oh, well, federal law says that transition planning starts at 16. Massachusetts state law says 14. I think most people really start around age 16, and I think that's a pretty good time. You have to start thinking about guardianship at about 17. So that 16 to 17 age frame is a really good time. Most people, transition is like a three-legged stool. You're looking at public benefits, so that's your Social Security, your Medicaid, your school benefits, and you know where you're going for your post-school, what public agency you're going to use after school. You know, is that going to be, you know, your Department of Developmental Services, whatever that is in your state, versus your Department of Mental Health, versus whatever other services you're getting? What's housing going to look like? What are your vocational services going to look like? You know, all of your public benefits, that sort of thing. You're going to look at your legal authority. Does somebody need guardianship, limited guardianship? If that's not in the cards, are we looking at healthcare agent status, power of attorney, you know, other legal documents? What does that look like? Do they need some kind of circle of support? How are we going to do that on a legal basis? So that's the second leg of the stool. And then the third leg of the stool is, how do we support all of that with estate planning? I need my special needs trust. I need to think about nominating guardians. As parents, you know, we want to do that. We want to put all of our stuff in place, right? For when we're not there, how we're going to leave our money, all of those kinds of things. That's your transition plan. Typically, my parents are starting to do that at 16, 17. I think that's a good time. You probably don't want to wait to do your estate plan until somebody's 16, 17. You want to do some preliminary planning long before that. But really, you know what your kid is going to look like as an adult by that point. When you have an 8-year-old, it's kind of hard to pinpoint how successful of an adult they're going to be. But when they're 16, 17, you really have a good idea what you're looking at then. And it's a lot easier to make a life plan. But I see people all the way up till when their kids are like 24, 25, and they're still making decisions then. And I think that's okay too.
Yeah, and you know, I know a lot of people get stuck on the whole guardianship. You know, selecting a guardian of your child. Do you have any ideas on, you know, eliminating that roadblock to get to at least have a plan started, or do you?
So are you asking me how to decide whether your kid needs a guardian, or who to pick as a guardian when you die?
Probably how you pick a guardian if you died.
Oh, yeah. So a couple of things to think about. It's really important to pick somebody probably in your state. I know that's hard for a lot of people because we're such a mobile, well, not anymore, but we used to be such a mobile group of people. And so the thing is, a lot of states, like in Massachusetts, if you don't have a Massachusetts guardian, that actually can impact your public benefits. Our Department of Developmental Services will, we have a statute that if you have an out-of-state guardianship, you could potentially get denied domicile for benefits here. So that can be a problem. It's not straightforward. It depends on other circumstances, but that can have an impact. So having said that, that's one factor. Another factor is really proximity for decision making, truly. You know, you want to think about that as well.
And somebody that's supportive too.
Yes.
You know, somebody that's in your corner, that's in, you know, right now, working through that process with you, being that level of support. You know, I know in your book you kind of talked about the different family members that were giving support and really, you know, could be just hanging the curtains or doing those little extra things for you. That is being part of that daily life and acknowledging what's going on. So.
And somebody, they don't have to be an expert. You weren't an expert when you started.
No, I can honestly say I was not an expert when I got started, and I'm still not an expert now.
Yeah.
And I do this for a living, so. Here's a question. When is guardianship needed or avoidable?
Guardianship is not voidable. Guardianship is terminated. So, and when is guardianship needed? For most of us, we're going to do that at 18. And we're going to start it right before somebody turns 18, usually 3 to 6 months before, because most states, it takes a while to get guardianship processed. Our state is very, very slow, and the courts are all closed right now, so it's even slower than normal. But you can terminate guardianship at any time, and that happens. You know, for some of us, our kids are on a much slower growth and learning trajectory than the average kid. So we may need guardianship now because we're not sure at 18 that they're gonna be okay and able to make those important life decisions. But we might be able to terminate guardianship when they're 25, 26, 27 because they are settled. They are living in a group home. They are living in a shared living environment where their circle of support is complete and they are able to make those decisions with a power of attorney and a healthcare agent, you know, and we are happy to terminate that guardianship, and the courts are thrilled when that happens. We really don't do that very often, but it happens, and we do that sometimes. And we can, in our state, very often, almost always, are doing limited guardianship. We just need guardianship for some big decisions, not deciding what somebody wears and eats every day. We need to make decisions about where somebody lives, you know, decisions about money, decisions about advocacy, just the big stuff to protect them and support them.
Yeah. You know, because at age 18, they become a legal adult, and we need to be able to make certain decisions. So
that's right. There's no automatic incapacity. There's no automatic anything. Even when you have a child like my Elizabeth, who was profoundly disabled, profoundly intellectually disabled, blind, in a wheelchair, couldn't speak, she was at 18 would have been considered a legal adult. And, you know, to look at her, you would have known, oh my goodness, this person absolutely could not make her own decisions. No automatic finding of incapacity. Only a judge in our probate court could have found her incapacitated based on medical evidence, and only a probate court judge could have declared me her guardian. That had to go through courts.
Yeah, absolutely. We got a question here. Where is the line drawn over who needs a guardian and who does not need a guardianship?
That is done by medical evidence submitted, and every state has their, well, first of all, it's stated in the statute of your state what the, you know, what the factors are to determine incapacity, and also what medical evidence is required. And some states are harder than others. Our state is moderate. I'm not sure what Illinois looks like, but some states are harder than others.
Yeah, Illinois, you know, we typically can get a probate court to issue an order, you know, and I would say moderate as well. So it's we're not very difficult, but we're, you know, everybody can't be declared incompetent.
Yeah.
So there are definitely strict rules with regards to what medical evidence that we're going to have to submit, and you know, not everybody needs the full boat of disability either. You know, you may need, you know, from a doctor's perspective, maybe you only need a limited guardianship for certain circumstances. You know, maybe somebody is not very good with money, but you know, they could probably make their own life decisions. And so you may be able to get, a limited guardianship or limited in certain circumstances.
That's right.
So, this question was, do the courts take into consideration what the child wants and who they want to live with as an adult? I know in the state of Illinois, most judges are going to take in consideration of different services or different people that who the child wants to live with. That will definitely be a factor. If it becomes a contested guardianship, you've got your attorney that's filing your guardianship, but then they usually appoint a guardian ad litem. And a guardian ad litem comes in and they are a third party attorney that reviews everything and they make recommendations. It's better to work things out ahead of time. And I don't know, I'm sure you would probably agree with this, but working out guardianship and who's going to be the guardian and things of that sort earlier in the process is always a better circumstance than going into a contested hearing. It just increases the cost. I don't know if, do you have any?
That's exactly the same here. So if you end up in a contested guardianship where people do need to ask the child or the adult child, where they want to be, or have some kind of breakdown of sometime here, sometime there, because we're talking about adults now. We're not talking about children anymore. We will have an attorney or a GAL, one or the other, appointed for the child, and they'll either be a best interest standard or there will be, an attorney who represents the interests of the child.
Yeah.
Depending on whether the child can actually have an attorney-client relationship. That's the important factor there.
Yeah, absolutely.
These are great questions, by the way. What a nice audience we have. My goodness.
I wish we could do live,
I know. We have to get better tools.
Yeah, absolutely. So any implications on COVID on special needs that you've seen?
So many. Oh my God, we need another hour to talk about everything that's happening. So a lot of things are going on. First of all, not being able to have caregivers at the hospital with disabled folks who can't speak for themselves. So that's changing. There have been massive protests all over the country, and I can tell you that that's changing. The ARC of the US and all of the state ARCs have been up in arms and have had some really good success with overturning those protocols at almost every level. It's been dangerous not to have caregivers who can speak for people who can't speak for themselves, or people who can speak for themselves but who can't understand what is happening. One of the things that's been going on is that our population has been hit harder than most, second only to the elder population, obviously, when it comes to COVID-19. What's going on with special education has been devastating, with kids at home and not receiving services. Now, do I fault teachers and school districts? I mean, I obviously think that for the most part, they're probably doing the best that they can. Not across the board. That's probably not true everywhere. But we need to make sure that we stay vigilant, and that as schools reopen, as programs get back to normal, that we are documenting any significant progress that our kids have and haven't made. Because here's something that's been interesting. a lot of people have noticed that both with kids and with adults with disabilities alike, there have been some interesting shifts in people's approach as they've been doing a lot of one-to-ones. And I think that that's going to change some dynamics about how we approach people's day. That some of our kids with intellectual disabilities, developmental disabilities, autism, are, shipping them off on a van with 6 other people and shipping them into a building with no windows, in a room full of 35 other loud screaming people is maybe not the best way to spend their day.
Mm-hmm.
We already knew that, but we kind of are seeing that perhaps finding another way to do their programming all day might be interesting.
Yeah.
So document how your people are doing, and we're going to have some interesting conversations this summer and this fall about our loved ones and about how we're spending our money on education and day programming and even residential services. And I think this conversation is going to go on for the next couple of years. And I think it's going to be cool.
Yeah, well, 2 points that you made, not having caregivers come in, we had an unfortunate incident here at the office. Our COO of our operations, he just passed away, and he wasn't able to have his wife to be present as he was dying. And, it's really had an impact on it has an impact on us. We couldn't go visit him. He was a lively guy, and there's all these additional protocols that just, it's impactful. So, that's, it's definitely changed a lot how we look at healthcare and that love and the connection and some of the things that we need. But also on my child's side, I've also noticed because he's not in a room, like you said, in the room with all the distractions, he's thriving. He's thriving at home, and that has a huge. We could say we can tell a difference in his attitude, tell a difference in a lot of what he's doing because of that change. How can you replicate that?
I don't know the answer. I mean, I know this is hard, and look, we as parents, we have to work, and we have to, we can't do everything at home, and I don't expect parents to be teachers forever and therapists and this and that, and it's not good for our kids to be isolated. But and it's not working for everybody, obviously. But I think it's a conversation starter.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. All right.
Todd, I'm so sorry to hear that. My mom's actually having surgery today, and she's all alone in the hospital too, and it's breaking my heart. I don't know. I don't understand. I think they could safely allow people to visit, and I don't know why they're being so hard-nosed about all of this.
Yeah. I don't know. I'm looking for if there's any other questions. I know we've gone over our time that we specified, and that we always, I always love talking to you, and we can, you and I could probably talk for days on the topic of special needs and all that, and I really appreciate you coming in. We will be sending out these slides and the ability to contact to find your podcast. Is there any cost to your podcast?
No, not at all, and no advertising, because I hate that stuff. So you can get it without having to listen to any advertising, and all that I ask in return is please give me a nice happy rating and a review, because it helps to get it out to other people who are looking for that same content. So if you like what you're listening to, please write me a review. I would really love that. Same with the book. If you do end up reading the book and you like it, please write me a review. It's so important. Thank you. And thank you for being such a great audience. You guys were awesome.
Yeah, love the questions. Love the questions. So I appreciate everything you guys had, and if there's anything else, we we have our contact information for both Annette and I. We really appreciate you guys being here today, and we thank you so much for attending. And if you have further questions, don't hesitate to reach out to us. I appreciate it. Thanks, Annette.
Thank you so much.
I'll talk to you guys later.
Really good to see you.
You
Bye.
too. Bye.